This is the Apple Watch Series 7, maybe one of the biggest updates to the Apple Watch since the Series 4, with it getting a much bigger display and thinner bezels. Inside of the packaging, we actually get two different boxes here. One of them is for the watch itself, while the other is for the included wristband. We'll go ahead and open up the main box first, where you get the Apple Watch, which we'll take a closer look at in a second. You have your typical documentation and paperwork with no Apple stickers included here. And then finally, there's the all-new charger. So what's different about this year's charging cable is it now uses USB-C instead of USB-A, which Apple says helps it achieve charging speeds that are up to 33% faster. But the problem is Apple doesn't include the actual charging brick in the box. So if you don't already have one of those wall adapters, well, getting one like this will set you back another $19. Otherwise, if you have an old Apple Watch charger, that'll work just fine. But let's take a look at the watch itself. So at first glance, it looks a lot like the Series 6, but there are some subtle differences. For one, this midnight aluminum color that we have here is way darker than the space gray that was available last year. And on the side, there's now just a single speaker cutout compared to the two smaller cutouts on the Series 6. But of course, the biggest change on the Series 7 is only visible once you turn the screen on. As we wait for the watch to boot up, let's quickly unbox the included sports band, where it's nothing special, it's just the standard band that Apple has been including for years. And if you're willing to spend a little bit more, there's obviously options like the braided solo loop or the leather link. Okay, back to the watch. So the Series 7's new display is 20% larger than the one on the Series 4, 5, and 6, and a whopping 50% larger than the Series 3 and older. And this is without the watch itself being that much bigger. Apple was able to do this by reducing the bezels or the borders by 40%, with those borders being so thin that the screen actually reaches the part of the glass that curves. So I guess technically you could say this is a curved edge display, with Apple taking full advantage of it with the new contour watch face. This new watch face basically squeezes the digits to the edges, and while it's not the most practical watch face, it does look cool, and it's something special that only the Series 7 can do. But on a more practical level though, the bigger screen is capable of displaying up to 50% more text, which will reduce how often you have to scroll when you're reading something like a text message. The buttons are also larger throughout the UI, making them a little bit easier to tap on. And yes, there's a full QWERTY keyboard. And I'm actually surprised by how well it works. I mean, there's no way you're gonna tap on the letters accurately, but it seems like there's enough space on the screen to give autocorrect enough data for it to be able to accurately guess what you're typing. I mean, it's actually pretty impressive how well it works. It's not one of those features that you're going to use all the time, but in a situation where you can't dictate out loud to Siri, it is nice to have. Now, other than the screen being bigger, the always-on display is 70% brighter, making it a little bit easier to see the time without having to lift up your wrist. But it's important to note that the increased brightness here is only for that always-on display when your wrist is down, and it doesn't make the screen any brighter in normal use. That's still the same as it was on the Series 6. But what has changed is the new crystal covering the screen, which Apple says is now 50% thicker, making it more crack resistant, and they also added IP6X dust resistance, meaning this is the most durable Apple Watch yet. Not that I ever had concerns with the screen cracking on any previous Apple Watches, but again, it's nice to have, which basically sums up how I feel about the Apple Watch Series 7 overall. At least compared to the Series 6, there's nothing here that makes me feel like I have to upgrade. It's just a bunch of little features that are nice to have, but you can get by without those features just fine. So whether or not this new Apple Watch is worth the $400 price tag largely depends on which Apple Watch you currently have. If you're on a Series 5 or a Series 6, I'd probably skip this one, but if you're on a Series 3 or older and have been thinking about getting a new one, well, the Series 7 is nearly perfect.